Доброго дня усім! Ми знову беремо участь у тренінгу «Муніципальні партнерства для європейської інтеграції», який розробила Cities4Cities в рамках програми Polaris «Підтримка багаторівневого врядування». Нагадаю, мене звати Марта Супрун, і я є експерткою з євроінтеграції на місцевому рівні ініціативи Cities4Cities. Сьогодні у нас вже така друга тема поглиблена, яка буде стосуватися політики згуртованості ЄС. І ми вже вчора мали можливість спілкуватися з вами про те, наскільки обширними є зобов'язання місцевого самоврядування в контексті європейської інтеграції. І розділ 22 законодавства єС, по якому Україна проводить переговори, є одним з тих розділів, де в Україні і в українських муніципалітетів є чи не найбільше зобов'язань. Кілька технічних моментів для старту. Хочу зазначити, що сьогоднішня наша спікерка буде розмовляти англійською мовою, тому я заохочую вас вибрати український канал у нижньому полі на панелі інструментів. Я сподіваюся, що ви знаєте, як це зробити. Якщо виникають якісь труднощі, будь ласка, пишіть у чаті. Також хочу нагадати, що наша навчальна програма є сертифікованою Національним агентством з питань державної служби, і ви вже зараз можете паралельно зареєструватися на порталі НАЦ та обміняти сертифікат з порталу Академії Cities4Cities на сертифікат Національного агентства з питань державної служби. Зараз мої колеги у чаті також надішлють вам посилання. Це можна зробити до 1 травня. І для мене сьогодні особлива приємність запросити до розмови сьогоднішню лекторку, яка погодилася доєднатися до нашого навчального курсу і поділитися своїм досвідом, своїми знаннями. З нами сьогодні Йоанна Кірилло, яка є представницею DG Regio, це Директорат з питань регіонального розвитку та урбан-політики. Йоанно, вітаю! And we switch to English, of course. Today we speak about the cohesion policy, which is the basement of the European Union, I would say. Today we will talk about the cohesion policy today as it is, its priorities, and of course we'll look forward into the future, into how this policy will change over time, what to expect from these changes, and how Ukrainian municipalities could participate in this policy, basically already now, as part of European territorial cooperation. I will assist Joanna with the presentation. I hope our technicians will now switch on the presentation. Презентації, будь ласка. Joanna, over to you.
Yes, so dzień dobry, I'm Polish, so I can manage a little bit Ukrainian to understand what you are saying, but I have to, anyway, to say what I have to say for professional things in English, so sorry about that. As Marta said, I'm working for Directorate General for Regional Urban Policy. I'm dealing normally with Western Balkans, but I have also in my portfolio, and I'm very happy about that, contacts with Ukraine at local level, so that's why I'm here today. And I hope that what I will say will be helpful. I wanted also to make some technical remarks. If I'm speaking too quickly, too slowly, if there is too much jargon, it's too complicated, please let me know. So the topic is, as you know, it's EU cohesion policy, present and future, understanding the current programming period and what is expected after 2027 when the new programming cycle is starting. So, yeah. What we proposed as a structure for this training, it's the EU budget and policy framework. the place and role of cohesion policy in the programming period 2021-2027, and what is the state of play and plans for after 2027. I hope it will cover, not in detail, but it will give you a general overview of what is, I think, the most important for Ukrainian municipalities and hromadas and so on. So first, the most important question, what is the EU budget for? So the EU budget funds policies that no single country can do alone. This is, for example, economic convergence. Thanks to this policy, the poorer regions are catching up. The climate and energy transition, so-called EU Green Deal, innovation and digitalization, which are the basis for competitiveness, security and migration, because these are shared challenges for all the member states. Enlargement and neighborhood, because this is stability beyond EU borders and also in the immediate neighborhood. Now, what is important, and now I'm really apologize because maybe there are many people among you who know perfectly well what I will say, but because I have to cover everything, even for people who don't have a clue about the EU, maybe some information will be a bit basic, but I will not go into details. So we have 3 delivery modes for EU budget. One is direct, and it means that the funds are managed directly from Brussels. The second one is shared. It means that European Commission and member states authorities are implementing programs jointly. And indirect management, it means that the Commission entrusts budget implementation to third parties. These third parties are first thoroughly checked by the Commission. Now, how the current budget looks like. So maybe I give you a bit of time to have a look. What is important to say that the biggest part of the budget is cohesion, resilience, and values. So this is the part which is the most interesting for us today. And as you see, it's really big. What happened after the coronavirus hit everybody? There was an initiative, a really very courageous one, and it means that the EU borrowed money on the normal market with very good conditions to help member states to recover after the pandemic. And it means that the budget was almost doubled. You can see this is called Next Generation EU. This is in orange. So altogether, the budget is really, really big. So
yes, Joanna, I think it's really very interesting observation that 2/3 of the EU budget is actually spent locally. So we could see it from this diagram. So we have cohesion funds here. We have funds dedicated to natural resources, which are also spent locally. Same time, like you also mentioned that EU funds generally are spent for the EU policies, not for something local. So why do you think we have this situation when EU has its own high-level policy and the spendings are in most cases local?
Yes, okay. So the basic rule is that the EU budget is complementary to EU countries' national budgets. It means that it prevents the duplication of efforts and comes into play when it is more effective to spend money at EU level than at local, regional, or national level only. Now, two important points. The EU budget combines resources at EU level. So it means it funds EU priorities, but also finances big infrastructure and research projects. Also, it helps to fund responses to challenges that go beyond its borders, such as the coronavirus pandemic, I've just said, climate change, and the threat of terrorism, as examples. The EU budget is also about solidarity. It enables the EU to support less wealthy member states in their economic development. And thanks to it, the EU can give a helping hand to EU countries when they are hit by natural disasters. Now, this was like a basic. And now to answer Marta's question, that more or less 2/3 of the budget is spent locally. So it seems that there's a paradox, but it's not really. And why? So if we were tracing the flow of 2/3 of the budget spent on cohesion and agriculture, you would see that the money is landing locally, on farms, roads, training centers, schools, hospitals, and so on. But the strategic decision-making and rule setting remains supranational. This apparent contradiction exists because the EU budget is designated as a policy implementation tool rather than a general service provider. So it means that the local spend is the mechanism to achieve EU goals that individual nations cannot tackle alone, such as single market, convergence, cross-border climate neutrality, or territorial cohesion that prevents a race to the bottom. What is very important also is that the investments must be planned in a seven-year cycle. So it requires strategic thinking, and it's not like ad hoc ideas of some politicians or other decision makers. Moreover, the programs are prepared in partnership with a wide range of stakeholders. And the third point I would like to make is that you would see that while the execution is local, the conditionality, for example, you get EU money to fund a road, local road, only if you meet EU green standards. And it ensures that local spending collectively solves problems that transcend national borders, which no single member state could coordinate or fund effectively in isolation. For example, we have public procurement requirements. There is more control and the policies and EU standards are enforced via the investments we are co-funding. Now, one example, because maybe this was very theoretical, but for example, if the EU were the typical service provider, it would act like a municipality utility company. You would call Brussels to fix a pothole in your street because it's broken. Then Brussels would give money and the decision to fix it would be purely local. But because the EU investments are a policy implementation tool, Brussels does not care about the pothole itself. It cares that all regions have a minimum standards of connectivity so that goods move freely, competition is fair, and climate targets are met. So the local spend is the mechanism, is the lever. The EU goal is the outcome. It means the load being lifted. In short, yeah. So this is really like a takeaway. If you see the money working locally, you know that the logic of spending is EU large, and the same standards apply to everybody.
That's a very interesting example, very practical, because it means that if we have a hole in the road, we should always think strategically in what way does EU care about this hole in the road? Yes, so that's I think one of the very important takeaways from this lecture as well, that you should always think of your own challenges you face locally in more global scale, so broader, and take into account all those EU policies, not only cohesion policy, but of course the Green Deal, the free market as a starting point to think of your local strategy, your local challenges. Thank you very much for this practical example. One more thing that it was very interesting for me to hear is that EU budget is complementary to national funding. So I always hear this idea that maybe when Ukraine joins the EU will address more money to regional level. So it seems to me like there is this prejudice that now the European Union will take care about regional development, and that maybe the load on the national government will be less. How would you comment this?
Yeah. Yes, okay. So first of all, it's to say that EU total budget, it equals more or less 1% of EU member states' gross domestic product. Whereas spending by EU national governments averages more or less 47% of GDP. So now, not to be too complicated. So if you are analyzing national budgets before and after accession, you would not see national governments reducing their regional development spending. Instead, you would observe a strict additionality action where EU funds must be added to existing national efforts, not to replace them. This is the starting point. The correlation is one of leverage and co-financing. National governments are legally required to provide a matching share, and it depends on the programs and the region, but typically this is between 15 and 25% for less developed regions. So it means that for every euro of EU funding, there is a national or regional spending. It means that the general spending for investments increases in absolute terms, because it needs to unlock the EU financing. Now, in the proposal which we have for legal acts for the next programming period, we say, this is a proposal, is under discussion, that when the money is committed, then the country has 10 months. When the money is given by the EU, the country has 10 months to commit it. So it means also it accelerates the implementation, and it requires a very good planning. It's also true that if you have a possibility to have 85% or 90% or 80% of a big project to be funded from EU funds, you do anything to find your matching part, which is small. And so it helps a lot to mobilize and prioritize these investments from national budget. I don't know whether I've answered the question. Also, what is important to know, that EU rules explicitly forbid substitution. So it means using EU money to pay for what the state was already planning to do alone.
Thank you, Joanna. And it takes me to the report that we produced as part of Polaris program on the impact of EU integration on local governance in Ukraine. And one of the recommendations of this report was actually to follow the example of other EU states and to found the revolving fund in Ukraine to support the implementation of projects from EU budget, which is one of the most crucial issues. I know that these discussions were taken to national level, but I would also encourage local representatives of local governance who work with projects to voice this issue also in the communication with national government, that indeed EU funding is only complementary to what national government should do and invest in the regional and local development. Thank you, Joanna, for answering my tricky question.
No. About the revolving fund, because I'm meeting many Ukrainian delegations in Brussels and everybody's talking about this, especially currently this is in the Interreg context. But there are countries, also candidate countries, who have a revolving fund. It means in Interreg, as you know, you have to first to spend your money and then you are reimbursed and everything goes well. And this is very often an obstacle for smaller or poorer partners to participate because they don't have this financial capacity. So indeed, this would be really a very, very good idea if this could be solved in Ukraine with your own means. Yes.
Thanks a lot. And we move forward in our presentation.
Yes, so I was a bit interrupted in the budget, but it doesn't matter. It's simply to say that we have, as Marta said, we have cohesion, resilience values. This is like 35%, the largest share of the budget. Then for agriculture is natural resources, environment, including agriculture is 31. Single market, innovation, digital is 13, security, defense, migration, external action, there are the remaining reserves. Now, where cohesion policy fits. So it's next slide. Even next, we already spoke about this one. The next one. No, sorry, it was the previous one. Okay, it was frozen on my screen. It doesn't matter. So where cohesion policy fits. So cohesion is the foundation. Without it, the EU house collapses. And this is true. The EU's main investment policy for all regions and cities and the EU's engine for unity and growth. So the goal is strengthen economic, social, and territorial cohesion by correcting imbalances between regions. And you can see when the EU funds are spent well, you can see how quickly regions are catching up. I'm from Poland, so in Poland you can see really like a EU funds miracle. We have 4 funds which are under the cohesion policy. One is European Regional Development Fund, and this is for infrastructure, innovation, small and medium-sized enterprises. For example, we have European Social Plus Fund. This is employment, education, social inclusion. We have Cohesion Fund, which will be very important for Ukraine. And this is for member states with gross national income less than 90% of EU average. And one, which is a new one, it's Just Transition Fund, and this is to support regions most affected by the transition towards climate neutrality. For example, regions where the coal industry was very developed, now they have to cease these activities, and this fund is to help them to have like a smooth transition. Cohesion policy covers 100% of EU regions.
Thank you, Joanna. There is one more question I would like to ask you with regard to this and with regard to the report which we produced. This is the question of a partnership principle that is incorporated in this in the European cohesion policy. Could you say a bit more what does it mean and what is the meaning of this partnership principle for local governance? Basically, as I understand it, so I'm here in the role of your inquisitive student today, that this is very important principle that is incorporated into the cohesion policy.
Yes, this is one of so-called horizontal principles. This is our jargon, but it means that we take it very seriously. This is what it means in practice. And in the next programming period, it will be taken even more seriously. And we are warning all the governments and everybody about that it will be checked. So the partnership principle in EU cohesion policy, it's a legally binding requirement. This is already Article 10 and 11 of Common Provision Regulations. So there is a very solid legal basis for that. And it forces national governments to move beyond top-down planning by ensuring close cooperation with a wide range of stakeholders, including regional, local authorities, trade unions, employers' associations, and civil society, throughout the entire funding cycle, specifically during preparation, implementation, monitoring, and evaluation of the programs. This means that if a member state fails to demonstrate effective partnership, the European Commission can suspend payments. Concretely, this means that instead of just the central government deciding how to spend EU funds, representatives from civil society and local areas sit on monitoring committees to co-design projects and have voting rights on which initiatives will be funded, ensuring that investments in areas like innovation, employment, and green transition are aligned with actual local needs rather than just central priorities. Now, to be concrete, because this is my daily life, because I'm managing 3 programs, Interreg programs in the Western Balkans. So if you were observing the implementation today, here is exactly what you would see in terms of channels, interactions, and decision-making power. So, number 1, this is the strategic level, the partnership agreement. This is a very important document, which is prepared by the member state in cooperation with all the stakeholders with this multi-level governance, so from any level of society, and then is discussed with the Commission and then is adopted by the Commission. So before any money is spent, the national government must draft this partnership agreement. Now, interaction, you would see formal consultations, workshops organized by the managing authority. Usually this is a ministry, before the document is sent to Brussels. As participants, so these are not just ministries, but regional authorities, cities, trade unions, employers, organizations, civil society, especially those focused on environment and social inclusion. Decision power. While the final sign-off, it's national, so it's between the government and the EU, partners have the right to demand that their specific strategic priorities, for example, just transition for coal regions, as I said before, are explicitly written into this agreement. If they are ignored, partners can formally lodge a complaint. This was strategic level. Now operational level. Monitoring committee, which is the core engine of all the programs. Monitoring committee is the body with wide representation, and they are deciding on how the program should be implemented. They are checking whether the program is going in the right direction, and they are selecting the projects. They are voting on the projects which should get EU funding. So this is the most critical visible mechanism for every operational program. For example, Digital Romania 2027 or Green Slovakia, a monitoring committee has to be established. How it has to be established, and the task it has to perform, everything is written into regulations, which are directly applicable. So composition, it is not just officials. By law, it must include representatives, as I said before, of regional local authorities, social partners, unions, employers, civil society, NGOs, and so on. The frequency, they meet at least once a year, but usually they do it twice a year. Decision-making power. First of all, they have to approve the selection criteria. What are the selection criteria for a project to pass all the checks and to get the EU funding? So the monitoring committee votes on the rules for how projects are chosen. The managing authority cannot change these rules without monitoring committee approval. Review progress. They analyze annual implementation reports. Reprogramming. If funds need to be moved from one priority to another, for example, because there is a crisis, this is a flood or something like that, the monitoring committee must approve this change. So ministry cannot do that alone. Then what you would see, the minutes of meetings showing votes, dissenting opinions recorded, and formal approvals of criteria. Members receive the same documents as the chairs of the managing authority 10 days in advance, so they have time to prepare, to discuss, to reach pre-agreement, and so on. Third very important point is communication channels and transparency. So first of all, there is something which is called single portal. So each member state must maintain a single website or portal listing all funded projects with beneficiaries. You would see a searchable database updated regularly, often quarterly, showing the beneficiary, amount, and objective of every project. Then there is call for proposals. So before a call is launched, a draft is often presented to the monitoring committee for feedback. In my programs, they go thoroughly through all the documents, they discuss, and only after that, the call for projects can be launched. Publicity requirements. Every project site must have a physical plaque, and every website must have a specific EU logo banner standing co-funded by the European Union. This is a visible channel of communication to the public. Now, specific participation mechanisms. Maybe you heard about that. I know that it exists in Ukraine. I participated in a conference dedicated to that in the Committee of the Regions, I think 2 weeks ago. There is community-led local development. This is one instrument which is very interesting. So in this specific modality, the decision-making power is flipped entirely. Local action groups composed of more or less 50% non-public partners, like businesses and NGOs, decide directly which small project to fund in their territory, because they know the best what is needed. The national authority essentially just pays the bill. The locals make the decisions. Another tool which we promote a lot is integrated territorial investment. And this is for urban areas. You will see urban authorities sitting at the table to decide how funds from different sectors, for example, transport, housing, education, are bounded together for their city. If you are interested, we don't have time. If you are interested, I can send you more information, more materials on this, because I think it's really worth exploring. Now, what happens if the partnership fails? If we get a negative signal, if partners are not consulted, they can report this to the European Commission. The consequence, the Commission can trigger a suspension of payment until the partnership principle is respected. This has already happened in a few instances where civil society was excluded, forcing the government to reopen consultations.
Thank you, Joanna. This is indeed, I think, one of advice to our participants is to be proactive, actually, and first of all to understand who are the members of the monitoring committees of this or that programs that Ukrainian municipalities can already participate in, because monitoring committees are there for Interreg programs and they are already established, they have members, so you could reach out to them. You should signal some of the challenges you have or the priorities when the new cycle of planning is happening. Also, we've heard about these partnership plans that has to be developed on national level. For me, actually, I've heard this already in the communication of our Minister of Territorial Development when he came to Brussels, that this was one actually of the issues of how to work on these partnership agreements in future. So we have to follow this process, we have to be involved through associations of local governance, through multiple consultations that will be arranged, and not to take this process formally, because this is important for local governance. And thank you, Joanna, once again for mentioning locally led development. We discussed it also yesterday as part of a chapter related to rural development mainly and leader program. So there are absolutely practical things the officers in charge of EU integration can do to follow the process and to be more effective in EU integration, in joining EU projects already now.
Yes, Marta, sorry, if I can add, because maybe this can be helpful and inspiring for some stakeholders from Ukraine. I'm responsible for Montenegro for Chapter 22 in DG Regio. As you know, the Montenegro is the front runner for enlargement. So I can share some things what they are doing, because maybe this could be replicated in Ukraine. Of course, it's different because Montenegro is very, very small, but still some ideas could be useful. So to prepare this partnership document, because in the new programming period it won't be called like that, but anyway, they need this document as a starting point and the basis for programming anything. What they have done, they organize 6 working groups by different teams, and they reached out directly to many associations, local authorities, and so on. So it was direct, but Montenegro is small, so everybody knows everybody. But for civil society organizations, they launched a call for expression of interest via all the possible channels, using also the website of the EU delegation. So I mean, they are taking seriously this partnership principle, because then everybody who said I'm interested, they will be taken and they will be sitting in the working groups. So maybe this kind of ideas could be also discussed internally in Ukraine. Also, they have a special working group on Chapter 22, and this group is very comprehensive. You have representatives of any possible stakeholders inside the group, and people said, this was informal information I got from Montenegro, from really local stakeholders, it's for the first time we are taking really very, very seriously. We are very happy. We are included. We have something to say in the early stages of any programming. So some ideas, which I will also share with your representatives at ministerial level, because if information is coming from both sides, from you and from us, probably it can inspire some people.
Thank you, Joanna, for answering the questions. Then maybe coming back to our presentation, I see that in your slide, in your next slide that will be shown now, that there are different categories of EU regions, right?
Yes. But I don't know whether you need any comments, because I think this is self-explanatory. What it means, PPS, it means purchasing power standards, because we are using the jargon, but this is what it means. So you can see what are the more developed regions, transition regions, and less developed regions. When we joined, Poland everything was less developed. now we have already some orange spots, thanks to the defense.
Yes, so in principle, if or even, let's say, when Ukraine joins the EU, it will most probably change this calculation dramatically, I would say. And this is also one of the issues, one of the political issues that we have today, because unfortunately, and also because of war, Ukraine will land among these less developed regions that would require investments to reach certain European standards. What will that mean in practice? Like, what funds you think would be available for Ukraine after Ukraine joins the EU?
I think this is really too early to talk about, especially for me, because now, as you know, all the funds for Ukraine, apart from Interreg, of course, and some centrally managed programs, this is DG NST and the Ukrainian task force. So I would prefer not to say to answer this question, but because simply not to say something which is not correct. If you want, I can consult my colleagues, and then to send you in writing the answer to all the questions connected to this.
Yes. Thanks, Joanna. And you mentioned DG Inest, who is responsible for general oversight of negotiations between Ukraine and European Union. And of course, like it's my own perception that we are only starting. So we are just at the beginning of this process, but what is the general progress as it's seen from Brussels? Yeah,
for enlargement.
Yeah, with regard, especially with regard to readiness for cohesion policy and implementing legislation under Chapter 22.
Yes. So I don't know how familiar you are with the enlargement process, with all the procedures. So first we have, for every candidate countries, we have like a screening process. So it means Commission is asking plenty of questions to know what is the situation like in every country. And after the screening process, so there are discussions between European Commission, between Council of Europe and so on, but this is like internal. But now the situation for Ukraine is such that Ukraine needs to fulfill 8 closing benchmarks before the European Commission. I'm talking about Chapter 22. So before the European Commission, so DG Regio can say that the Chapter 22 is provisionally closed. I'm saying provisionally because nothing is closed as long as everything is closed. This is the general rule. What it means, closing benchmark. Closing benchmark, it's a technical requirement which must be in place so we have to be sure that when Ukraine joins, that from one day to another you have everything in place, all the structures, laws, procedures, IT systems that you can manage EU funds. So these closing benchmarks are very technical minimum requirements for setting up the system necessary for the EU funds to be managed properly. There are 8 closing benchmarks for Ukraine, and one which is, I think, very reassuring for you. So one of them is to have in place, and now I'm quoting what is the official document endorsed by the government, Ukrainian government, that you have to have in place the necessary legal basis, consultation processes, and capacities to ensure resources, participation, and ownership by all relevant public and private stakeholders at national and subnational levels in the programming, implementation, monitoring, and evaluation of cohesion measures in line with the European Code of Conduct on Partnership, supported by the advancing decentralization reform. So if you wish, I can send it also in writing. Maybe it would be easier, but I think this is one of the requirements which have to be in place before we can say we close the chapter 22. So we took care of local stakeholders.
Thank you. And this is like really very important to follow this process, because the changes will come every day. Yeah. So
Yes.
we have a very intense process of European integration, and what has been relevant 2 days ago may not be already so relevant today. So it's really important for those people in municipalities in charge of EU integration really to follow this process daily.
Yes, Marta, maybe one thing also to keep an eye on. I wanted to tell you what is the state of play for today, as for yesterday. Let's say today, I don't know, yesterday. There is a document explaining in detail what So we have a document which is explaining in detail what would be the deliverables for each closing benchmarks. So for example, closing benchmark, which I just said about having everything in place to be sure that everybody is involved in the cohesion policy. This is general, but then we say there are 8 points, for example. It means that this and this has to be in place, this has to be signed, this has to be selected, and we will be checking that. So this document is being finalized now on our side, but the other document which is important to follow is that the Ministry for Development and Communities and Territories of Ukraine has prepared the national program for the approximation of Ukrainian legislation to the EU law. And this is the action plan for 2026-2027. I don't know whether this document is public, but if it's public, please follow it and see, maybe you could contribute somehow to work of different ministries, because in the program it says this and this has to be done, and who is responsible, what ministry, what entity. So if it's public, I would really check.
Thanks, Joanna. Now coming back to the cohesion policy and its main aim, why in principle it exists. So I would ask that we see the presentation once again.
Yes.
And we could discuss it in more detail, because we started to speak about cohesion policy, but in fact it would be very good to know exactly what is the main aim that EU follows when it implements this cohesion policy.
Yes, so I think this is another slide now. Okay, I cannot exactly follow in Ukrainian, so it doesn't matter. Okay, so the raison d'être of cohesion policy. So cohesion exists to prevent a two-speed Europe. And we see that it works. So cohesion policy corrects imbalances between countries and regions and addresses the diverse development needs in EU regions. So the general aim is strengthening economic, social, and territorial cohesion in the European Union. This is Article 174 of the Treaty of Functioning of the EU. So it's really like a basic legal document. Ensure all regions can compete in the single market and no member is left behind. And for Ukraine, this is your training ground for EU membership, learning EU rules, building institutions, and connecting to EU markets before accession. Now, the core philosophy of the cohesion policy for the current programming period. So as you know, the budget for cohesion policy is 392 billion. And we have key principles which are really important, because this is not only about money, this is also about setting standards for whatever you are doing with this money. So first is the partnership. So managing authorities must work with local and regional stakeholders. The second is shared management. It means EU and member states set rules and strategic approach. Member states, regions manage implementation. For Interreg, when Commission has a lot to say, it's when we are preparing the program, because we can say, you should change this, you should modify this, you should add this, and so on. But once the program is adopted, we are in the monitoring committee in advisory capacity. So if I have enough authority, maybe somebody will listen to me. But if not, the decision-making power, it's really with the country. The third is multi-level governance. It means involvement of local authorities is mandatory. And then the fourth is continuing shift from spending money to achieving results. And this is very important because very often we can hear, even when people forget that they're talking to the Commission, we have good spending rate. And then we are asking, okay, you spent money, but what for? What is the outcome? And in new programming period, this will be the basis, because programs or the countries will be paid not because they spent money, but because they achieved what they promised to achieve. And this would be like a very big shift. Now, what is relevant for Ukraine? This model of shared management and partnership is a key chapter for accession preparation. But this you see with closing benchmarks that this is really taken very seriously. Now, yes, cohesion policy, what are the current rules, the basic current rules? So concentration. So funds go mostly to poorest regions. So it means where the GDP is less than 75% of EU average. Not all, because cohesion policy covers all the regions, but most of money goes there. We have 5 priorities we have to focus on. One is smarter Europe, and this is innovation and digital, for example. Greener Europe, like climate and energy. Connected Europe, like transport and mobility. Social Europe, jobs, education, social inclusion. And closer to citizens Europe, and this is about local development. There are strong conditionalities, so funds are tied to rule of law, reforms, and EU values. Partnership, region, cities, civil society, co-design programs, and overlook their implementation. Performance, intended results, not just financing activities. And now how the cohesion works in practice. If we are involved in Interreg, so the rules are the same, but not everybody is involved in Interreg programs. So the journey of a euro from Brussels to your region, what are the steps? There are 5 main steps. So the first, it's EU sets the rules, and this is in the regulations which are prepared for every programming cycle of 7 years and multi-annual financial framework. Then the member states and regions design the programs. Then when the programs are launched, implementation of the programs, so projects are selected. And they are selected by the monitoring committee. Then the EU and national funds co-finance the program. And this is between 10-20% of co-financing. And then there is monitoring of implementation and evaluation. There's evaluation ex ante, during the implementation, and ex post to see what did work, what did not work. This is the cycle. Then implementation tools for this programming period. So we have, as I said, the partnership agreement. This is national strategic document negotiated with the Commission. Then we have operational programs, it means detailed document for each region sector defining the strategic orientations of programs, priority access, deliverables. So what is expected, what the program is committing to deliver at the end. We have community-led local development, which you already know. We have integrated territorial investment, which you already know. And what is important, we introduced many simplification measures because the administrative burden was very high. So we promote to increase the use of simplified cost options like flat rates, lump sums, to reduce this administrative burden, because it was very heavy, especially for small partners with small administration. Now I wanted to say something which is already relevant for you. This is the Interreg. I think it's next slide. Okay. And it's not because I'm working for Interreg and I love Interreg, but really Interreg is the cohesion training wheel for Ukraine. I mean, this is one of the rare places where all the candidate countries are really on equal footing with member states. And candidate countries can train themselves. So first of all, it's about the knowledge and then implementation of EU rules. So I think this is really the best way of learning, because it's not the theory, it's not the training, it's learning by doing. It's hands-on. So as you know, for cross-border cooperation, Ukraine works with Poland, Romania, and Hungary, where there are cross-border projects. And this is learning by doing, of course, because you practice EU rules like procurement, audit, cooperation, capacity building for local stakeholders, how to write an application, how to implement the projects, and so on. And this is before the accession. So it means that people who were trained in Interreg, they will be absolutely fully operational from the day one when you join the EU. And there is no other tool which does it, because IPA or Ukrainian task force, it helps with money, but Interreg teaches in practical way.
Yes.
I don't know whether people in the audience who are there can confirm, those who are participating in Interreg, but I'm convinced about that. Yes. Yes, Marta, you wanted to say something?
Experience in Interreg programs, please basically write in the chat, and I also encourage you to think of questions to Joanna, which we could ask immediately or after we finish the presentation. I would like to have more in-depth discussion with you about Interreg, because of course Ukraine is a big country and not fully covered by Interreg programs in the sense of programs that has this infrastructure component, and that you could really in practice follow procurement rules, apply this or that demands requirements to EU funded projects. What would you recommend to those who are not covered by Interreg cross-border programs like Interreg Next programs? Is there a way they could be more involved, or they could gain this experience before Ukraine joins the EU? Because you mentioned that basically those who actively work with Interreg programs, they are already prepared. So this is like a laboratory or a testing ground for being an EU member.
Yes, this is a bit complex question, because the whole territory of Ukraine is covered by some transnational and interregional programs. The problem is that these programs usually they don't have this hard investment component. So it's difficult to learning by doing when they don't do investment. One proposal but this is for the ministries, and I don't know how feasible it would be. It's whether the national funds could fund temporarily, at least, a program for territories which are not covered by cross-border Interreg, simply to give the opportunity, maybe not to make hard investments because this is a lot of money, but at least to have funds to get in touch and to make partnerships with partners in the EU. We don't have such a tool at our disposal now. I don't know whether this would be feasible for the government of Ukraine, but this would be, I think, very, very useful for a very big part of Ukrainian territory, because it's all the northeast and central part. But otherwise, like some small ideas which are not solving the problem, but still, it could be, there is an EGTC, European Grouping for Territorial Cooperation, Eastgate Europe, with headquarters in Constanța. So maybe the stakeholders from Ukraine could be like observers and to learn, but you need also money, even to travel. You need money for that. When I was talking, we don't in DG Regio, we are not in a position now to fund such a program, or yeah, it could be envisaged, but this is not for the European Commission to establish or joining European Grouping of Territorial Cooperation, but the initiative should come from Ukrainian stakeholders.
Just to mention that this European Grouping of Territorial Cooperation was founded just, I think, 3 weeks ago in Romania, and it unites over 280, if I'm not mistaken, different local and regional actors in Ukraine, Romania, Bulgaria, and Moldova. This is already the second such European grouping of territorial cooperation where Ukraine cooperates. We also have another such format called TISA for cooperation between Ukraine and Hungary, and it has been working for for a decade. And that does not limit actually territorially, like speaking in terms of territory, who could participate in this grouping. So I would encourage especially those municipalities who are interested in cooperation with these countries to explore how they could join, because this is this format of a legal entity which is found on the territory of the EU and is ruled by EU law. It's a kind of a special format as an association with many members that implement projects for the interest of these members who have common goal, like for instance, making this region more connected in terms of Eastgate Europe EGTC. So it's very important to track these trends, and I hope that in May we will also organize a seminar with different representatives of EGTCs around Europe and could learn about this instrument more. Yes, over to you, Joanna.
No. It's also, I think, a good idea, if you have any funds, is to have like a very short study visit to the regions, border regions, to see how they are managing this, because there are regions at the border which are integrating the cross-border priorities into their domestic regional operational programs under European Regional Development Fund. So they are using National Cohesion Fund to pre-finance the hard infrastructure components, a possibility that Interreg currently is missing. So you have some well-performing member states at your border, so maybe also this would be possible. Of course, it's not hands-on. You are not participating. You are not responsible for what you are doing, but at least as very active observer, maybe this could be done. And then, if you need any help with finding good partners, then DG Regio would be ready to help to find the proper pool of coaches, if I can say.
Thanks, Joanna, and I just want to let you know that our participants are sharing their experience, especially one of Ukrainian communities, Чудейська громада. They share their experience that they now participate in Interreg Next Romania-Ukraine program and will implement project in 2026. So I would then encourage everyone to visit them and to see how they will actually implement this project. The leading partner is on the Romanian side, which is also, I think, a good idea to start by small steps. Yes, if you don't have the experience, not to aim at being the lead partner, but to find the partner in EU countries who have more experience than you have and that who lead you in this process of Interreg programs.
Maybe, Marta, also one thing, because I don't know whether everybody in the public knows about that, about this small cross-border program between Ukraine and Moldova, because it's something new. So people who are eligible from that area, maybe it will be also interesting to have a look at their website.
Thanks a lot, and we also promoted this opportunity among our network, and we will have also the representative of the managing authority of Interreg programs in the Cabinet of Ministers at the end of our course, and I'm sure they will mention this program and how you could apply. This is the small projects funds between Ukraine and Moldova, basically managed by regional authority, by Odessa Regional Development Agency. So you will learn more if you stay at our training course till the very end. So now that we discussed a bit the current cohesion policy, and you also managed that we have different life cycles in cohesion policy, and now this cycle we are all in ends at 2027, which is quite close, I would say. So what's expecting us in the future? What are the new trends and new developments, and is the general context, the Russian war against Ukraine and the crisis in migration crisis in Europe is taken into account when planning this new cycle of the cohesion policy? So please tell us more.
Yes, the situation has changed, and we have like a revolution, because in the approach to cohesion policy and the budget and the management. But I mean, exceptional situations requires exceptional means, so this is where we are in the middle. So there is a very big pressure on cut budgets because we have rising costs for defense, for migration, green transition, and so on. We have new priorities against defense, strategic autonomy, digital sovereignty, and so on. I don't have to elaborate because you know better than me what is the situation like. Then we have the enlargement dilemma, let's say, because integrated Ukraine and Western Balkans will drastically change the convergence mathematics. So all the national allocations will change and so on. there will be a big impact. Montenegro, no. Ukraine, yes. Then the simplification versus control. So we would like to simplify everything as much as possible, not to have this heavy burden and bureaucracy and so on, but then control is also very much needed. And stronger links to rule of law, anti-fraud as safeguards. We have green transition, so cost of decarbonization remain very high. And then people are criticizing that that's why the economy of the EU is not competitive because of the green transition, for example. So this is like a general context. Then how it looks like today. So the Commission tabled the new multi-annual financial framework proposal on 16th of July 2025. The main key elements are that this proposal is reducing the number of headings from the budget from what we've seen on the previous slide to 4. And now we have like a proposal, it's economic, social and territorial cohesion, agriculture, rural and maritime prosperity and security. This will be covered by national and regional partnership plans. The second one is competitiveness, prosperity and security. And the third one is global Europe. And the fourth one is administration. Also, the number of spending policies, which will be called programs in the next programming period, decreased from 50 to 16. So this is the one simplification and grouping of various elements. The second is to seek to simplify and harmonize EU budget rules for different funds, to extend budget flexibility and strengthen performances assessment. So it means that when we have different funds in one single program, if something happens, it's much easier to shift the allocation, to shift the funds to what is the, I don't know, there is emergency. Now it's quite complicated. The procedures take a lot of time. Here, it should be much more flexible and efficient if there is a need. And then the much greater emphasis is put on competitiveness and defense spending. So this is general. Now, for the budget 2028-2034, the Commission has proposed to integrate cohesion, agriculture, migration, and security policies. Now it was like standalone elements in the budget. And then it's proposed to put it in a single framework. This is what I said. This is the national regional partnership plans. The aim is to integrate multiple policies in a single plan to reduce risk of overlaps, to avoid coordination issues, to support more strategic investment choices and allow for flexibility. Some EU spending will also be reallocated from cohesion and agriculture to competitiveness, defense, and external action. About simplification, these are trends, these are ideas. So there is a consensus and demand from member states and regions to reduce administrative burden, which I'm repeating, but this is really complaint which is coming all the time to the Commission, that to spend €1, you have to spend 1 week to get this €1. So the changes which are proposed to answer this question. So there will be performance-based payments. So it means now what we have in the programs said, we spend this and this, they sent a payment claim, supporting documents, and because they spent €1 million, we are reimbursing €1 million. Now it will be different. It will be, program says, we promise to construct 10 schools and 100 kilometers of a highway. Once they deliver, they get payment. We are not checking all the rest, because this will be paid based on delivery of what was promised. So it's called performance-based payment. It means that there will be fewer reporting requirements, that there will be greater reliance on audit system rather than individual transactions. Audit systems, it means that the auditors are checking if the system of auditing financial flows, it's working, if it's reliable or not. There will be expanded use of lump sums and flat rates, which we called simplified cost options, and digitalization of the management cycle, which is the e-cohesion. The goal is to have faster implementation and lower error rates. I hope it's not too technical, but still, if it's money, it has to be technical as well. So.
Yes, thank you, Joanna. Will that also apply to Interreg programs, right? So it's not only about cohesion policy, but we could expect some simplifications that would allow more Ukrainian stakeholders to actively involve in Interreg programs. Also, I think civil society will benefit a lot from these simplified procedures. So these are good news.
Yes, Marta.
Yeah.
But only to be clear, I'm talking here about the relation between managing authority and the Commission. How the program will decide to manage whatever its audit, whatever its money, co-financing, financing, checking, this is up to the program. I'm talking about the level up.
Yes,
but still we are promoting simplification. And for example, one of the questions I'm asking always my programs, when there is a call for projects, please give me the number of newcomers, people who have never participated in your projects. Because I don't want the strongest and the richest to get 80% of money. And then you have always the same people, similar projects, but the same people benefiting. And let's say the poorest, the weakest, the newest are like left over. And then I'm really pleased to say these are 3 programs in the Western Balkans. Each time is like 50% of newcomers. I don't know how it looks like in the Interreg programs with Ukraine participation. But I mean, this should be really, really promoted because Interreg is for everybody. This is not for the EU, it's not big money. And I think this is really the best tool to involve anybody who is interested. There is also possibility to have small project funds, to have pilot projects, to have preparatory projects. There are many possibilities, but it depends on the people sitting in the monitoring committees, what they see as the main need, and how to involve as many people as possible. Because I think this is also one of the Interreg goals. It's not to build a highway, because this is not the best tool, but to involve as many people as possible, to bring them closer to the EU, to prepare for accession, and also to see what are the possibilities, to have international contacts. I think Interreg is ideal for that. So that's why, at least we are promoting very much this openness and facilitation for the newcomers.
Thank you, Joanna. And we have another question in the chat, which is probably not fully addressed to you, but maybe you will have some advice to our participants. Like, whenever some challenges with implementation of projects, I may presume, appear, who could come to help to these municipalities who are facing the challenges in implementing EU-funded projects? Is there a way to receive some consultations or assistance if you are in trouble with the EU-funded project? What would you recommend?
But what kind of troubles?
The question does not specify, but maybe generally speaking, like who in this system could help municipalities with advice on how better to implement projects? Is it the national authority managing Interreg programs? Are this any other, I don't know, contact points or any other institutions that are part of this structure? Can
I
someone
think first
pick
of
the
all you
phone in European Commission to consult?
you can always call me if I can help. There is no problem. If I can help, I will. To be pragmatic, I think first of all it's your national authority, because this is the job also to help Ukrainian stakeholders. The second is the joint secretariat. I know in many programs, unfortunately, I'm not managing the Interreg programs with Ukraine, but in many programs, they have different trainings, different matchmaking, for example, to prepare for projects. They give advice. So joint secretariat, it's for sure the competent people, and that this is part of the job. But yeah, the first it's national authority and the joint secretariat for me. If you have antennas, these are like branch offices of the joint secretariat. If you have them in Ukraine, it will be also a good contact point. But because the question, so maybe you have some more precise question, the person who wrote it. So maybe via Marta or directly to me, if you can write in Ukrainian, it's also okay. If you write, then I will try to give you bilaterally more detailed answer if I know what kind of problems you have in mind.
Thanks, Joanna. Please write to our email and we will forward this to Joanna. Or actually, you can always contact any official of European Commission. It's very convenient. You can find the contacts also on the website. It's very easy. It's always name and surname, and then the typical
thank
domain.
You, Marta.
So this is the trick. So coming back to our presentation and the tendencies after 2027, maybe you would like to add something, because we are basically at the final minutes of our training, so maybe we could just mention the most important things that our participants should remember.
Yes. So I think what is interesting also that, as I said, we have now we have 5 objectives for the next programming period, 5 thematic objectives. Is to reduce regional imbalances, then the second, social employment, education, inclusion, agriculture, common fishery policies, then to protect and strengthen democracy and EU values. Now, because the situation has changed dramatically since the draft regulations were prepared, there is a discussion going on adding the 6th objective, and this is strategic autonomy, strategic resilience or security, call it as you wish. And the focus area would be the security and resilience and security of supply chain, defense industry integration in regional clusters, energy independence at the regional level. So this is not decided, but it's in the air, let's say. Now you have the table, and what are the trends? So what is more or less decided, but nothing is decided before it's adopted. But when there is an agreement, that is primary focus on green and digital security and resilience, it stays. The management, as I explained, there will be performance-based payment, that when you deliver what you promised, what you commit to deliver, then you will be paid by the Commission. If not, not, even if you spend money. Then delivery mode, this is shared management as it is now. Flexibility, there will be higher flexibility for crisis responses. And then geography. So this is the only point which is like trends and proposals, because we don't know. There is enlargement coming. It's very high. It's really like a top item on the political agenda. It doesn't depend only on us. It depends also on the member states, on the progress made by candidate countries. So that's why this is in like proposal trends still. because now we are EU 27, maybe we will be EU 30. We don't know. We wish everything goes well, but so I think this is more or less the novelties, which I elaborated on already before. Now, I think what is important, this is strategic recommendations for Ukraine, and I think this is really the most important slide for you, is to build capacity now. To train the managing authorities in shared management principles immediately. Don't wait for accession. The other thing is, if the local authorities want to send somebody to sit in the monitoring committee, the person has to be knowledgeable. If it's Interact, the person should be fluent in English. And sorry for saying it bluntly, should be there to contribute with something, not to only sit as an observer, because this I also seen in some monitoring committees. There were plenty of people, local representatives, very nice. When I asked some questions, and they had to vote on the projects which were submitted. And I said, I don't understand this and this in the application. You have to vote how to commit, I don't know, €1,000,000. Could you please explain? Then it turned out that nobody read the applications and they were voting on these projects. And this was local level. And then after lunch, everybody left. So I mean, this is like a bit caricature. But I mean, if you want to be operational, taken seriously, and to have a weight in the discussions, you have to bring something to the discussion. So people have to be knowledgeable, committed. If it's international cooperation, maybe not very fluent in English, but communicating in English. And I think this is what you can do already now at local level. Then decentralization is to strengthen local self-government, hromadas, to prepare them for the implementation of the cohesion policy. To prepare yourself, I think what you are doing, Cities4Cities, these are trainings, this is the best way you can help to be ready. What is also important is data and monitoring. So implement IT systems compatible with EU standards. And this is the e-cohesion for tracking funds. And strategic planning, and it can be at national, regional, or local level, is to develop long-term development strategies that align with EU objectives, not just immediate reconstructions or ideas of some politicians I don't want to comment on that, but still, I think this strategic thinking and long-term planning is very important.
Thanks a lot, Joanna, for this very good conclusion of our today's training. Thank you very much for sharing your experience. I would just open the curtain that Joanna is doing so much to support Ukraine, not only in her capacities at European Commission, but also in other capacities with humanitarian activities. So thank you a lot on behalf of all of us for joining us today and for all you do. And we stay in touch, and you will have more friends in Ukraine after this lecture, I'm sure.
I hope, and then any questions which were in the chat or which will come after the presentation or whatever, please send them, and I will answer everything the best I can.
Thank you, Йоанна. Я зараз перейду на українську мову і хочу подякувати всім, хто бере участь в нашому курсі «Муніципальні партнерства для європейської інтеграції», який підготувала Cities4Cities в рамках програми Polaris «Підтримка багаторівневого врядування в Україні». Залишайтеся з нами впродовж цього тижня і наступного, і ще одного, щоб дізнаватися більше. Сподіваємося, що вам було цікаво і корисно. Діліться своїми відгуками про цей навчальний курс з колегами в соцмережах. Нам завжди приємно, коли ви ділитеся своїми враженнями, і нам приємно ставати кращими завдяки вашим коментарям. До зустрічі завтра о тій самій порі, о 10 годині ми чекаємо вас знову. Будемо мати двох теж прекрасних лекторок і гостей цього навчального курсу. Це буде представниця комітету регіонів, Наталія Долі, а також Анна Котляра, яка представляє DG Invest. Будемо розширювати наші горизонти європейської інтеграції разом. Гарного вам дня попереду. До зустрічі завтра.